Welcome to this update video. So we're going to do things a little differently this year. I'm going to make a presentation now, which really every Fluent user needs to be able to follow and will be useful to every single user. And then I'm going to introduce some different updates that are more physics specific, or if you're interested in the numerics, etc., you can watch those. So some will be very short, some will be a bit longer, but this kickoff one is an important one because it addresses some of the changes that have been made to the user interface. And so this is going to affect every single one of you, and there's lots of really good stuff here. So let's carry on. So one of the first things you'll notice is that there is now, when you start the software, here an option to choose what capability you've got, and there's a new one called Pro. So if you have a CFD Pro license, you can actually do a restricted set of simulations. Basically, you can use a watertight meshing flow, do steady state, single phase, non-reacting species, conjugate heat transfer, a few different densities. You can use a pressure-based coupled solver. You can run on your desktop, or you can use some distributed parallel, but other advanced features like using batches and journals, etc., or UDFs are not supported. The idea is that this is an entry-level CFD option and is therefore priced in that way that allows you to have the full Fluent experience. So there's no reduction in power in the actual watertight meshing or in the post-processing, etc. There's just a limitation on some of the physics. And the good thing is that this is actually the same interface as you would be using if you move to the full Fluent. So if you start off simple and want to be able to start doing these basic things in Pro, and then when you move to Premium, you will only see the difference of there being more buttons along the top row and therefore in the tree, which allow you to address more physics. Also, keep in mind that if you come from the discovery route, when you want to do a refined calculation, you're actually going to be using CFD Pro. So you'll be able to bring files across here into CFD Pro and use all the standard file structure, etc. And then ultimately, if you want to do something more complex, somebody can open that in CFD Premium and add more physics. Okay, so that's a nice addition in flexibility. There were quite a few additions to the graphics and the layout. So we've seen this improved layout over the last few years. Now, all the controls for this ground plane, etc., up here, being able to show different objects, hide and select, are all here. You can go backwards and forward through the views. And so this is giving you more flexibility there. Another flexibility is coming from the fact that when you create a plane with the plane tool now, you can optionally create multiple. So if I just play this movie quickly, you can add a single plane, but you can also say put on a block of 5, and then you can adjust the behavior by shifting either the base plane or the distance between them. So that's going to make multiple plane creation much easier. And the same for isosurfaces. You can now create not just one isosurface, but a range of isosurfaces with a defined spacing. Again, making life easier. There are now embedded windows. So what this allows you to do is not only be displaying a plot, but also be tracking your monitors and maybe a monitor that is showing you a report that's showing you what's going on. So if I play this again, you can see that we've got a transient pulse of flow coming in there, and each time that pulse ticks over. We can see that happening on the vectors, and we can also track that the residuals are converging nicely. So especially good for when you're developing a model to be able to check the setup and make sure that you've actually set up what you intended to. There's been a few graphics window changes. The really most important one of these is that there are now two types of windows. So a blue F for Fluent is a user window, and a gray F is a reserve window. And reserve windows are for things like monitors, your residual plots, etc., which Fluent is creating. And the whole idea of this is that there's now more control over window creation, and there shouldn't be any clashes between what you've produced and what Fluent is putting out automatically. And another option there is that we've now got much more control when we create something of where we display it. So normally when you just create a new contour and display it, it sets it up on its own, but you can actually do that, still put it into a window, but you can add it to another or add it straight to a scene. So it's much easier to do things. It's really just a saves you creating a scene manually. Really, this is a big ticket item for this release, is that the expressions have undergone multiple refinements and additions, and all of these are really going to make your life a lot easier. So they've completed setting up the expression functions that you need for doing forces and moments and getting the centroid of an object. When you need to put in multiple data points here, like for an axis or a vector, you can now not only give it the usual method of units, but you can give it a secondary where you make a fourth argument here and put that in quotes, and then that applies those units to everything. Also now, it's very easy to take components. So .mag takes the magnitude, .x takes the x component. So once again, you've got a fully featured set of functions here for forces, torques, etc. My particular favorite from this release in terms of usability is the fact that when you create an expression now, those expressions go into one of the categories that you can use in plotting. So as soon as you've got an expression that has a field that can be plotted, then you'll have a list of expressions and you can directly plot them here. So the whole point of that is that not only can you test out expressions before you run, but also you can use expressions for post-processing, and that makes life really easy. So that's a great usability. You don't actually have to put the expressions into a variable or anything. It just works. There's a full set of vector operations. So this is particularly important for those of you who want to construct your own models or do your own processing, post-processing, because you can do the dot product, cross product, you can get the gradient of a scalar, you can bring in vectors and do projections, etc. So all of that is going to make manipulations really easy. Another feature which is bringing the power of these expressions to the fore is the fact you can now work with profiles under expressions, something you've been able to do in CFX for a long time. So what that means is that you can use expressions to do transformations of profile data, etc., and bring it in. So it gives you a lot more flexibility with profiles. And then a few usability items which are good. Syntax highlighting means that when you create an expression, as you can see along the top here, you're getting multiple colors, and that's helping you read that. So it gives you a much clearer structure of the expression. There's now an expression manager you can open up, and in that you can find out all you want to know about that expression. You can evaluate it. You can find out what the units are going to be, etc. And then finally, when you use an expression now, especially for things like boundary conditions, it's become smart so that when you switch on new expression here, it will only give you the options of those that have the correct dimensionality. So anything in this list here will be suitable to use as a velocity inlet. So again, something that makes life easier. Picture resolution has been improved so that you've now got a whole list of standard resolutions that customers have been asking for. And of course, you can make your own. So that gives you a lot more flexibility there. We've added new video encoders, MP4, AVI, etc. So again, you can actually get better videos, and this will address some of the strange behavior that you could get with the older video recorders that are now very outdated. There's now an easy way to track down your messages. So when you get warning messages, etc. here, how do you go at the end of the run and find where they were and what they related to? Well, you now can get a list, and those are hyperlinked. So all you have to do is go in there, click that triangle, look at the list, pick the one you want to go to, and it will go find it for you in that file. And you can read, first of all, exactly what it says, but more importantly, where it happened and perhaps therefore why. So that's another nice usability function. There's a dark theme. So for those of you who would like to be able to program in the dark theme and work, who are used to it, it's there available. I have to say I've started using it and find it very nice. This is a really good addition for those of you who want to record lots of data and maybe do comparisons. Then you can create a simulation report. So this is really a combination of what was in Nsight and ideas from the post-reporting functionality. So when you create a report, you can choose what goes into it. By that, you can have data about the setup of the run, the mesh used, the computer it ran on. You get all your expressions listed, etc. You can get your solver parameters, get your convergence plots, and then you can also choose to have certain plots go in there, certain scenes, etc. If you create scenes, those automatically get put in as an image, but also as a 3D interactive image, which allows you to then bring them into any sort of modern HTML browser and do rotations and interact with the image as if you're using the Ansys viewer. If you want to turn this into a report, then you've also got the option of outputting this as a PDF file. So I think you're going to find that really useful. And there's quite a number of these usability features that I'm using already. So that brings us to the end of the general information, and I think that's useful to all of you.